Hello. The topic I chose to write about was why immunizations of children should be mandatory. This is a topic I feel like is generational for our time and something that poses a lot of importance and needs to shed some more light about to bring more understanding to people. The importance of my topic was um, it's not always about the individual, but rather the greater good of the society. Another important aspect of my topic was to educate, to broaden people's viewpoints over this topic, since this is a current issue, like I said. A lot of people, they Google stuff or take information from their friends that isn't always true. My research question, I had three that kind of encompassed like my whole research question collectively. My first one were, what are the social implications associated with immunizations and the public school system, which I think is very important. My second one was, are societal norms and expectations dictating households over state legislation? So are people holding, how they run their households and societal norms over legislation or vice versa? And my third one was, should parents be required to vaccinate their children before they attend public school? Moving on with that, I would like to talk about my literature review. The three theories that I used in my literature review were the functionalist theory, symbolic interactionism, and rational choice theory. When it comes to these three theories, I kind of associated three questions with those theories. The first question would be why people make the choices they make, along with the old saying, for every action there is an opposite or equal reaction, which in this situation I believe that there was. My second question was, what exactly do vaccines mean to people? To certain people, people associate vaccinations with autism, and some people associate vaccinations with having no threats at all. It's just a part of enrolling your children in public school. And my third question that I associated with my theory was how society manages public health. I felt like when we deviate from cultural practices and norms, that kind of we start to lose equilibrium in our society. So I felt as with these three theories, that allowed me to elaborate more on why immunizations are important. Moving on with that, the hypothesis that I created when I was going through this topic and just trying to get my thoughts together um, was I expect to find that parents who do not want to vaccinate their children are in the minority of the population. Even though they have been very successful in spreading their message, the law will not be changed because it is not right for the majority of the population. This is more of a case by case basis rather than a mainstream population dilemma. And after gathering my information, I felt like it was a case by case basis rather than something that applied to the entire mainstream of parents and vaccinating and public school systems. Moving on from there, my methodology for this paper as I was writing it was I used Google Scholar. I also used the Texas Tech Library System to help to find peer-reviewed journals for my research paper. And then I also collected some information from the Texas Health and Human Sciences website. This allowed me to elaborate more on exemption information and what all a parent must present in order to exempt their children from getting vaccinations. A lot of my data focused on the U.S. as a whole and the state of California. The state of California actually provided quite a bit of information that I used throughout my research paper as far as people who chose to vaccinate, people who didn't choose to vaccinate. Throughout my paper, I talked about there being a herd community, and in that case, the herd community was a community that chose not to vaccinate, and certain things that posed as threats and why they chose not to vaccinate. Moving along, to my, moving along, um, to my, 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 um, moving on to my most important findings. My most important findings throughout this research paper were mostly just how severe the impact can have on society when we do not vaccinate. There was an article I had found for my research paper that talked about a measles outbreak at Disneyland. And because of the fact that people who chose not to vaccinate, like I said, that herd community, that allowed so many people at, a theme park to get pretty sick. I want to say it was around 30 something people that got sick for this measles vaccination. But regardless, the fact that, because of one person, maybe two people, I'm not quite sure on how many people were at the park that weren't vaccinated, it caused so many other people to fall ill. My conclusion for this paper was based off my research. I had found that through the use of the rational choice theory, the functionalist theory, and symbolic interactionism theory, it allowed me to better address the topic of why immunizations should be mandatory. I had hypothesized that there would be strong opinions, which there were. It was very, left side and right side. The people who supported vaccinations were more than willing to do it, and the people who didn't support vaccinations weren't that open to it. What I did not expect to find was the lack of openness for parents who chose not to vaccinate. They stood very firmly in their beliefs, and they didn't really seem like they were open to changing their minds and potentially vaccinating their children, even though it does pertain to the greater good of the community. I found that my hypothesis was correct. This is a case-by-case basis. This is something to where people will not win. It will always be the community and the greater good and, the overall health of the community that will prevail over people's public choices, and the fact that how you choose to run your household does not dictate the rest of society outside of your household. Now I'll be moving on to my policy recommendations. And with my policy recommendations, I said that the findings in this paper conclude that while parents have many choices to make in their child's life, vaccinating is not one of them, and it is also very limited by law. What policymakers need to work on is educating the public with medical facts about vaccinations to help combat the hysteria of what people think vaccines might do to their children, which I believe is very true. They could partner with community programs that work with expecting and new moms, public school systems, and government agencies to spread the truth about vaccines and the necessity of them to keep the public safe and healthy. And that concludes my overall viewpoints for my paper and why I chose to conduct my research paper over why immunizations should be mandatory for children. Thank you.